The world did not end with a bang, but with a slow, sickening sigh. The gray blight swept through cities, turning vibrant streets into graveyards of shuffling, moaning husks. For Dr. Eris Thorne, a virologist who had watched his colleagues succumb one by one in their sealed lab, the end was a personal failure. He had been too slow. But in the final frantic hours, he had discovered something else. Not a cure, but a key. The blight wasn't a mindless plague, it was a network. Crude biological internet where the dead were the nodes. And Eris, through a combination of a synthesized neurotransmitter and his own unique brainwave frequency, could log in. He found the first one in his apartment building's stairwell. Former neighbor, Mrs. Gable, still in her floral apron, her jaw hanging by a thread of gristle. He focused his will, a mental command as simple as moving a finger. Stop. The moaning ceased. The shuffling feet stilled. Turn she did. Profound, terrifying power settled in his chest. He was not a survivor. He was a shepherd. The world was now his pasture. He started small, methodically clearing his building, then his block. He would stand in the center of a street, a lone, gaunt figure in a stained lab coat, and extend his consciousness. A wave of silent command would ripple out, and the shambling horde would freeze and part for him like a grisly Red Sea. He called them his quiet people. His mission was born of a broken heart's logic. Somewhere in the ruins of Chicago, his wife Lena and their daughter Lily might be alive in the fortified enclave known as the Sanctuary. The world between him and them was a gauntlet of raiders, mutants, and millions of the blighted. But he was no longer a man to be preyed upon. He would build a bridge of the dead to carry him home. The army grew. A dozen became 100, then 1,000. He no longer saw their individual faces, the man missing an eye, the woman with a teddy bear still clutched in her rigid hand. They were units, a wall of flesh to absorb bullets, a tide of teeth to overwhelm barricades. He marched at their center, a pallid king in a court of corpses, his mind a roaring storm of silent commands. The first true test came at a raider checkpoint on the ruins of an interstate. The marauders, clad in scrap metal and cruelty, opened fire with heavy machine guns, their laughter dying in their throats as his front line fell, only to be immediately replaced, trampling over their own fallen without a flicker of hesitation. Eris did not flinch. He simply directed his tide. It felt the impacts on his horde as distant, psychic static. When it was over, he walked through the carnage, the raiders now just fresh, twitching additions to his ranks. He felt a pang of something remorse. Horror, but he buried it under the cold calculus of necessity. Every loss was a tool replaced. He found a photograph on one of the raiders, a picture of a smiling family. He crumpled it and let it fall. They were no longer people, they were obstacles. Weeks turned into a grim pilgrimage. His army was now a river of death flowing through the heartland, its numbers swelling into the tens of thousands. The sheer psychic weight of controlling them was a constant, grinding agony behind his eyes. He forgot the sound of his own voice. His world was the silent hum of the hive mind. Then he reached the outskirts of Chicago. The sanctuary was built atop the ruins of the old military base, its walls high and bright with searchlights. And there, standing on the ramparts, was a figure he recognized through a scavenged scope. Lena. She was alive. She was holding a rifle, her face etched with the same fierce determination he had always loved. A hope he thought was dead flared in his chest, so painful it was like a physical wound. He was here. He had done it. He would disband the army, walk to the gates a lone man, and be reunited. He pushed his consciousness forward, commanding the entire horde to halt. A mile from the walls, the sea of the dead froze in perfect, unnerving unison. But the sanctuary saw only a monstrous horde, a sight that had heralded the end of every other settlement. A panicked shot rang out from the wall, then another, a volley. Eris felt the commands in his mind fray. The soldiers on the wall, terrified out of their minds, were firing indiscriminately into the motionless ranks. And with each death of one of his quiet people, the delicate psychic web he held began to snap. He tried to project a command of retreat, but it was like trying to hold back a collapsing dam with his bare hands. The horde, their connection to his will severed in patches, reverted to their base programming, hunger. A wave of them, no longer under his control, surged toward the walls. No, The word was a raw, torn scream from a throat long unused. He was losing them. He was losing everything. He poured every ounce of his will, his love, his desperation into a single, focused command aimed not at the army, but at the section between the uncontrolled horde and the wall. Hold the line. The ones still connected to him obeyed. They turned away from the sanctuary and began to fight their own kind. It was a silent, horrific ballet of the damned. Limbs were torn, decayed jaws clamped on rotting flesh. It was a civil war in hell, orchestrated by a breaking man. Through the chaos, his enhanced perception found one specific quiet man, now fighting to protect the wall. It was clad in the tattered remains of a postal uniform. It was Frank, their old mailman, who used to bring Lily lemon drops. The tears came then, hot and uncontrollable. He wasn't a shepherd. He was a grave robber. He had desecrated the dead, turned memories into monsters. And all to reach a wife who was now looking at him from that wall, not with love, but with utter terror at the necromancer commanding the apocalypse at her gates. The last of his control shattered. The psychic backlash threw him to his knees. The entire horde, now completely unleashed, descended into a feeding frenzy, turning on itself and anything else. Eris did not try to run. He knelt in the dirt, watching his hope, his army, and his humanity die in a seething, moaning mass. He had built a bridge of the dead to reach his family, only to realize, too late, that he had become the very thing from which they needed to be saved. The final, crushing tragedy was not that he had failed, but that he had succeeded, and in doing so, had lost himself so completely that there was no one left to go home to. The only sound was the wind, whistling through the silent, stationary form of the old mailman, who stood guard over a grave of his master's making.